I go to my floor. He goes to his. And I texted him. I honestly don't know. I even texted him, but I was like, what's wrong? And then he was like, dinner is off. And I was like...
He's like, you're not eating tonight. Oh my God. What is up, everyone? I'm your host, Alannized, and this is Noche de Pendejadas, your favorite podcast turned talk show donde yo traigo a tus influencers favoritos para platicar y posiblemente sacarles sus trapitos al sol. Hoy les tenemos un episodio que ustedes me han estado pidiendo, and I'm so excited de tenerla aquí con nosotros el día de hoy. So with that being said, please help me welcome my guest tonight, Pau Torres!
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you so much for being here. I'm actually so excited, amigas, for Pau to be with us here tonight. Si ustedes no saben, and if you guys have been living under a rock, this is actually your second time aquí con nosotros. You were on the show hace como 2 años. Tu vida ha cambiado completamente. Like, your life has really done a 360, 180, como se diga eso. So I'm so excited to really have you here with us el día de hoy para platicar y poder conocer un poquito más a Pau Torres y lo que hace ahora en día. Antes de que empecemos con el chisme y todo lo bueno, yo te voy a dar el micrófono a ti para que nos digas un poquito más de quién eres y qué haces.
I am Pau. I'm 22 years old and I am a content creator, and I also have my own podcast where I try to uplift women. And yeah, that's me.
Hace un poquito de todo, amigas. Si ustedes no consumen su contenido, ¿qué chingados están haciendo? Vayan y corran y consúmenlo. We're going to talk a little bit later on about your podcast, but if you guys have not heard your podcast, watched it, les dejo eso de tarea, pero ya vamos a empezar con el chisme. Ya vamos a empezar con lo bueno, conocer a Pau un poquito más. I like starting off with this question because I really do think it's important for people to know a little bit more of your upbringing, of how you grew up. So vamos a empezar con la pregunta que siempre empiezo with. How was Pau growing up? Where were you raised? ¿Y tú qué te acuerdas de tu niñez? Cuéntanos.
Okay, so I was born in Mexico, soy de Chihuahua. We moved to the United States when I was 2 years old. I grew up raised in Colorado. It's so funny because actually a few days ago, I posted this TikTok and I was just talking about how I was like such a good kid growing up. And I was thinking the other day and I was remembering, actually, I was a little traviesa.
You're actually, I lied.
I didn't lie on purpose, but I really did lie because I was thinking about it. Like, my sister and I, we were crazy together. We were very crazy. I have a younger sister. And so something we would do growing up, we were all undocumented at the time, right? Keep this in mind. But like, we would be in the backseat of my mom's car. Anytime she would drive us, I don't know why we would do this, to make her mad, basically. And we would take off our seatbelts and we would just stand up.
Yeah.
And we would ride around standing up and she would be like,
Siéntense.
yeah. Like, toda histérica, super mad. And I mean, that didn't end up cute after doing that, but we would do that. Girl, I was just all over the place, honestly, when I was little. When I think about my childhood, there's a lot of really beautiful things that I can think about and remember, but there's a lot of just like, I was a troubled child. There was a point where I was just like super rebellious. I hated authority in every sense of the word, every single way. Even, with my family, they would try to, I guess, control me. I mean, they would try to, raise me and teach me, obviously, as a child. And I was never having it. I wasn't having it, but I think it also had a lot to do with the way that certain people in my life tried to parent me, I guess you can say. That also like brings in just my family, just like, I guess, being toxic, you can say. And like I said, there's a lot of good, but there's also a lot of bad when it comes to my childhood. I would say that my childhood was probably one of the hardest times of my life. And I'll just like give you an example of what made it so hard. Or not what made it so hard, but recently, like a few years back, actually, I got diagnosed with childhood PTSD. There was just a lot of toxicity I went through, like emotional, physical abuse, all of that. But I'm glad that I went through what I went through because it has allowed me to be a very empathetic person, and it has created who I am today. And I know that I wouldn't be able to connect with people in the way that I do if I hadn't gone through that.
I want to go back to you telling us about, all of your family not being born here. What was it like growing up in the United States being undocumented? Did you feel like at such an early age tú ya sabías y decías, sabes que yo no soy de aquí, no tengo los mismos privilegios? And what was that moment that changed for you guys where you guys were able to get your citizenship?
I honestly never was like, no tengo los mismos privilegios, but I always knew about it, and I always felt it's kind of like in the back of your mind, it's like a stressor and a worry. And as a child, I don't think it's as much as, a fully conscious adult. But I would think about it like, at any given point, you don't know what's going to happen to our family. And my mom would just like stress that to us too. Thankfully, so the reason we came over here is because my dad was actually working in the US and my mom wanted to be with him. And so he actually had gotten his citizenship from working here. He was doing construction, and back then it was a lot easier to get your citizenship. So he had his citizenship. He actually ended up helping my sister and I get ours at a pretty young age. We were 7 years old. I was 7 years old when I became like a legal citizen. And yeah, that was a whole thing in itself though, because so my parents I'm over here, I feel like I'm trauma dumping my life right now.
No, girl, aquí estoy para eso. Tú dime
Oh my
todo.
gosh.
Hablando de eso, yo quiero platicar un poquito de la relación con tus papás. Nos cuentas that, growing up, your life was a little toxic. Do you feel like you were more of like a mommy's girl or a daddy's girl?
Before their divorce, I definitely was a daddy's girl, 100%. Like, I remember just being little and just like, literally, these are my fondest memories of when I was little. I would just go and lay on my dad's lap and drink my BB. Your biberon? Yeah, I would just do that. And yeah, I always loved, like, what my family tells me is that I always wanted my dad. Like, I just wanted to be around my dad when I was a little baby. And then, once they got divorced, yeah, it shifted more. I wouldn't say I ever was a mommy's girl, honestly. But I wasn't a daddy's girl anymore. I'm like, I wasn't anybody's girl.
I was no one's girl.
I was lonely.
Literally, like a lonely ass kid. But ¿a qué edad se divorciaron tus papás?
At 5 years old.
Were you told what was going on? Like, te dijeron, mija, tu papi ya no va a estar con nosotros. Or what was that like? ¿Cómo te enteraste tú que tus papás estaban separando?
They were having problems, and it was very evident to us because I remember there was like a day where I don't know exactly what happened. My mom was yelling at my dad, and my dad locked us in a room all together so that my mom would like leave her hystericness to herself.
Yeah.
So like he was trying to kind of protect us from that. And I remember shortly after that is when, I don't know exactly what happened, but my family tells me that I called my grandma one day, my mom was on the phone with my grandma who's in Mexico. And so I asked her to pass me the phone, and I told her, tita, mi mamá corrió mi papá. I snitched out on my mom, and then that's when I realized, like they separated. And honestly, I don't know how I really understood it at the time, but I just know that it had a big effect on me because that's kind of when all my rebelliousness also started up. And I kind of shut down in a way because my dad was really my everything back then. Like, he was, we had that super close bond, super close connection. So it was really, really hard for us to be apart. Then it got to the point where we only saw each other, I think, like on weekends or like every other weekend, something like that. It was hard. And it also was like, even going to see him, it's weird because I love him and but even going over there, my sister and I kind of didn't like having to go to another house. And it was like, it was boring to us. We were like, we don't like his house. I feel like men, with their space, are very much like super plain and simple.
Yeah.
Some of them, like, he was definitely that type of guy. So it was just like, like, I don't want to go. And it definitely kind of drew us apart, I guess you could say.
Do you feel like eventually you guys almost stopped having like full communication at one point?
No, we never stopped having full communication. I think that our relationship was very much like he was always there. But I think the emotional connection wasn't always there anymore. Yeah. And that was really hard. But now I have a way better relationship with him. Like, we're a lot closer. We talk more. We have a lot more conversations. And, I'm really happy that we've been able to cultivate that now. But yeah, in my childhood, it was different.
It was hard. Nos estabas contando de que, pues, you know, you started becoming rebellious a little shortly after that. Cuéntanos un poquito de la relación con tu mamá. Do you feel like once they started separating, you almost gave your mom a hard time because deep down inside, you kind of almost blamed her for not being able to keep, like, the family together? Or cómo te sentías tú? Or how was your relationship with your mom growing up? Do you feel like you guys were able to be closer, or if anything, like, more apart because of the situation you guys were going through?
Honestly, I think our relationship was always very interesting. I don't think that I necessarily resented her for like my parents splitting up and stuff, but I think for her, she'd never had a lot of patience with us. So it was a very weird dynamic. I think it caused me to grow up really fast. It caused me to just like mature. Like we would have meetings sometimes where I was like 7 years old and my sister was like 6 years old. My mom, I don't know how old she was. And she would just like tell us, okay, like we're not going to fight anymore, you guys. Like we're going to be good, all good now. And now looking back on it, I'm like, it feels like that shouldn't have been the conversation that we were having. It should have been more so, you know, like the adults doing that, which I don't resent my mom for that though, because at the end of the day, like she did as best as she knew to do.
Yeah.
And she has grown a lot and she has, you know, changed a lot. But yeah, it was just she was very short fused when it came to us. Like I said before, it has made me mature very fast. And it has also made me be able to relate to people and understand people more and just be more, I guess, emotionally... Well, like I said earlier, like empathetic. It has made me a very empathetic person to have gone through just like all these turbulence in my life at a young age. And also but it has also affected me in a negative way, I feel like, which is I feel like I have a very big walls up and people do enter those walls, but very rarely.
Yeah. Quiero platicar un poquito de eso, kind of elaborate a little bit of what you were talking about, you becoming a very empathetic person because of that. What made you become so empathetic, or what was the moment where you're like, you know what, I want to be the change? Porque miramos mucho that like a lot of teens or kids that grow up in environments like that end up, you know, going the wrong ways because like, you know, of the violence or whatever the case is. What made you be like, you know what, I don't want to live a life of, you know, violence or whatever the hell you were going through like at such a young age? ¿Qué fue ese momento para ti donde dijiste, sabes qué, yo quiero una vida diferente?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy that you asked this. My tia was actually telling me that when I was younger, we would go visit Mexico. We would go like every summer. And I guess I became what I didn't like. So I became very short fused and I became that like person that was like a firecracker that would just explode, right? I was like that towards my family. I was like that towards my sister, my tias, my grandma even. And I hated that. I hated being like that. And at a young age, I could see that in myself. And I was like, I don't want this for myself. I would tell my tia, I was like, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be this person. And I knew that I wasn't meant to be that way. I was like, okay, it's not like it's my personality. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good, amiga.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, like this isn't who I am. It doesn't feel right.
Do you feel like you were kind of almost mimicking whatever you would see at home?
I was mimicking the behaviors that I would see and just thought that that was an acceptable way to be. And I wasn't, you know, I'm a respectful person. I'm a person who, you know, obviously sees other people and wants the best for them and is caring and kind. And at that moment, it was different. And I wasn't really that person. And so me saying that to my tia, I think that was one of the moments where I really was like, I don't want to be like this. And I'm going to do anything in my power to change and to not be this person anymore. It was very hard. It was something where it just took, honestly, it took just time and trial and error. And even, I think at one point, I kind of suppressed that part of myself. Definitely when I did therapy a couple years back and when they told me, oh, you have PTSD, that's kind of when I really worked on it. And I think just with time, with working through it with my therapist, all of that allowed me to actually break free from that.
I think it really is. You know, una cosa que me encanta de ti is how positive and just the type of content you like put out there. It is very inspiring. You know, cuando yo miro tus videos, like even if I can't relate because you do a lot of content for the girlies, but like when it comes to like mental health, me encanta cuando platicas de eso. You know, I think it is very important as adults to take the responsibility to heal our inner child because muchas de las cosas or a lot of the toxic things we do now really does stem from our childhood. You know, quiero platicar un poquito más de tu niñez. Did your parents either or se volvieron a casar o juntarse?
No, they didn't actually. No. Yeah. And my dad now has a girlfriend. I'm over here exposing his whole business. I don't think he'll ever see this. But my dad has a girlfriend now. But when we were growing up, they never... I mean, my mom had a boyfriend at one point. But yeah, they never got remarried or anything. Which, I mean, I think that helps maybe not having to go through that too. Because I'm sure that would have been like a little bit of a whole other story. Yeah.
How did you feel whenever you would see your parents started dating? Did it ever anger you? You're like, no, you're supposed to get back with my dad or my mom, vice versa. How was that for you growing up?
Honestly, with my mom, like, it was never anything. It was never a problem, actually. And then with my dad, he never really, like, ever mentioned anybody until we were, like, way older. And with him, I feel like I was a little bit jealous. Like, when I was younger, I feel like I would have been a little jealous. Like, oh, like, you have a girlfriend, you know?
Yeah.
But no, now I'm like, okay, good. Like, I want you to be happy. Yeah. Like, that's, you know, you be happy. Find you someone. I hope you find someone, you know?
Yo quiero saber un poquito de la relación con tu hermana. Nos cuentas that you have a younger sibling. Yes. Cuéntanos cómo fue esa relación growing up. How did you and your sister get along? ¿Se peleaban mucho or were you guys super, super close?
Okay, so we're only 14 months apart.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
Okay.
Or 15 months apart.
Rápido se ponen a trabajar.
I know, I'm like, girl, I thought y'all didn't like each other. Due to us being so close in age, we were always bickering, we were always fighting. Nos agarramos a trancazos like all the time, literally. Yeah, we were bad. Like, I remember literally doing crazy stuff. Like, I would jump on her stomach, dude. Yeah.
Just cuz?
Yeah.
You're like, it looked like a trampoline to me. Me.
And I would... Oh my, not a trampoline.
Not a trampoline, but y'all getting it right now?
No, but yeah, we were really, really, oh my gosh. Like, we were bad. At one point, we would freaking, like, threaten each other with, like, this was when we were a little older. We would, like, grab, like, a taser and, like, a knife and, like, act like, we never actually went and, like, hit each other with it, right? But we would, like,
se amenazaban, like, a ver, cálale, a ver cómo te queda.
Yes, and then so that was bumpy. And then at one point when I was already getting into, like, getting a little bit older, like middle school, I remember my friends would kind of turn into her friends a little bit. So, like, my friends would come over all the time. And, you know, naturally she would be there. And they were close in age, too. So we all kind of got along. And I didn't like that at that time. I was like, I don't want you to be friends with my friends. Like, my friends are my friends. You could have your own friends.
Yeah.
And even though we were only a year apart, I saw her as, like, the little girl.
Yeah.
Like, for me, she was, like, 5 years younger than me.
Did that kind of not sit well with her growing up?
Yeah, she didn't really like that, and it did cause, like, different problems. But eventually we grew out of it, and I was more comfortable. Obviously, that's, like, petty little kid stuff. Like, oh, you can't be friends with my friends.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we eventually grew out of it, and now, like, I mean, we don't have many similar friends because we're obviously in different states. She's in Colorado still. But I'm not, like, oh, like, I don't want you to be friends with my friends. Like, no.
What was the moment for you guys donde tú dijiste, ¿sabes qué? Al fin del día es mi hermana. I feel like our relationship needs to change.
You know what? Even though, like I'm saying, we would argue all the time. We were so bad. We always had so much love for each other still. Like, we always were there for each other. I would get, like, picked on when I was really young. Like, let's say 5 years old on the monkey bars at the playground. My sister would, like, come and tell the kids, like, why aren't you playing with my sister? Like, she would, like, always defendía. So even though throughout our whole, like, relationship, we've had so many ups and downs, we've always talked things out, and we've had a lot of deep conversations and, like, cried to each other about how we feel. And what really changed our relationship, like, fully, I would say, is me moving away. I think it made us a lot healthier. I think we did need that distance from each other because we were... Like, you know, with your sibling, you're so comfortable to the point where there's, like, no boundaries. And then you end up really hurting each other at one point when you don't have boundaries.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I moved away, it's like now we talk to each other kind of more so like happily to talk to each other. Like we appreciate and value each other a lot more now.
Quiero platicar un poquito de lo que acabas de mencionar, boundaries. I feel like that's super important. And I feel like it's something as Latinos that we don't have. You know, I've had conversations with my parents where I'm trying to explain to them like, oh, look, this is a boundary I'm gonna have with you, with my siblings. Y no entienden uno, hasta veces they make you kind of feel like you're the
Like
bad
you're
person or
crazy.
you're crazy. Do you feel like now, you know, hablamos un poquito de la relación con tu hermana y de con tus papás growing up. Do you feel like now as an adult, you had to kind of put some boundaries up para que pudieran tener that healthy relationship? If so, what do you think are important boundaries to have with like family members?
Yeah, 100%. I think I set up boundaries. Even in my like early teenage years, I started setting those boundaries with my family. Like, no, you're not going to treat me this way. And, you know, I'm not a little kid anymore. So I actually have more of a say in what is okay and what's not okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think boundaries are very important. I think especially in Hispanic households, the way that we speak to each other, sometimes it can be just, there can be a lot of, you know, I guess not necessarily hatred, but just the way that you talk sometimes to each other. That's something that I definitely had to establish with my family. Like, okay, this is not right. And also, even when it comes to conflicts, if we were to have a conflict, I want to talk it out and I want to actually move through the issue, because that's another thing we do. We just have all these problems and then we act like nothing happened the next day. And then that builds up a lot of negative feelings. So that's a whole other thing too.
I think it's really important to like have boundaries as family members because como dices tú, I feel like suele pasar mucho where there's no boundaries and like because you're so used to and you feel like this person is going to be in your life all the time, you keep constantly hurting them, whether that's with words or actions. Hace poco, déjales cuento esta historia, amigas. I think like 2 weeks ago, actually, this happened really recently. I took my mom, my nieces, my nephews to Knott's Berry Farm. Me los llevé a todos and I wanted the kids to all get, you know, like the little jueguitos. I wanted all my nieces and nephews to like win a prize, right? So usually there you kind of just have to play like the little fair games up until like a certain amount of time to get a toy. Y yo había visto un puesto and it was a Hello Kitty. Like all the prizes were Hello Kitty. And I remember I was like, oh my God, Sofia, my sobrina, right? I was like, Sofia, look, the Hello Kitty, so cute. And she got really hyped up and she wanted to do the little game. And, you know, I paid, I think it was like $45. I had her, my other nieces and nephews. And I told my nieces, I was like, hey, you know, for this game, no matter who wins, el premio lo va a agarrar ella. Right? Because ellos ya habían agarrado su juguetito, nomás le tocaba a ella. I was telling her, I was like, oh my God, get that Hello Kitty, get that Hello Kitty. Like, it's so cute, it's so cute. Y me decía que sí. She was like, yeah. Ya cuando ganó y era el tiempo de que tenía que escoger the fucking toy, she got like a random ass one. Like one that I was like, girl, that's ugly as hell. Like, what the hell? Like, it genuinely was an ugly toy.
And she wanted that
And she wanted it. It wasn't, I mean, it wasn't ugly. What was it? Do you
like
remember?
it was ugly.
It was a part of like the Hello Kitty friends, but it wasn't like Hello
It was like
Kitty.
X.
You know, it wasn't like an ugly toy porque también era un juguete de peluche, but it wasn't like the toy that me and everybody thought was like, oh my God, she's gonna pick that one, right? And ella huevo, she was like very stern on like, no, I want this one, I want this one. And me, my mom, even my grandma and my sister were like, ay, Sofia, qué feo es eso?
peer
Like, qué feo es eso?
pressuring.
Literally, but like she had already chosen it. And we kept telling her like, that's so ugly. Why didn't you get the other one? Why didn't you get the other one? She looked at my sister. Keep in mind, my niece is literally like no more than, she's not even over 10 years old. I think she must be like 7 maybe. Pero no tiene más de 10 años. She looks at my sister because my sister was like, Sofia, get another one. That one's so ugly. Get the other Hello Kitty. Get the other Hello Kitty. She looks at my sister and she goes, you're so rude. When she said that, when she stood up for herself, I literally felt bad because I'm like, oh my God, like imagine you liking something and everyone's shitting on you. As soon as she said that, hasta chinitos me da la piel, like thinking about it because I was really proud for my niece, even though I was the one also like telling her it was ugly. But I literally looked at my sister and everyone else. I was like, yeah, déjenla. Déjenla, because if that's what she likes, we gotta respect that. And I feel like sometimes, como en esa situación, I literally was talking to my mom and to my sister, and I was like, this situation seems so little to us, but as a child, in her
tells
mind
them
space,
a lot.
it's gonna literally like scar her.
Yeah.
Like imagine, so I literally was like, you know what? I even apologized to her. I was like, you know what, mommy? I love the toy you picked, even though I fucking did it. I was like, I hated
That
it.
shit's ugly.
I was like, fucking waste of 45 bucks. But I literally was like, you know what? This is a boundary she's putting up, and we gotta
that's
respect.
amazing.
And I feel like as in Latinos, because I was explaining that to my mom and my grandma, and they kind of weren't understanding it at first, but I was like, Mom, mírenlo en esta manera de que ella quiere eso. Y si eso es lo que ella quiere, tenemos que respetar and just kind of be like, okay, if that's what she picked, it's her toy, not ours.
Exactly.
And I feel like it's very important, like, to put boundaries. That I literally, at that moment, I was like, wow, she's literally putting up a boundary.
As
because
a 7-year-old,
as a 7-year-old,
that's amazing.
It's crazy because hasta se enojó. She literally, I think she got mad from everyone telling her like it was ugly, that she literally stood up. So a veces la familia son las personas that cross those boundaries more easily. So quiero
100%.
platicar un poquito de high school, Pau. Quiero conocer un poquito, how was that for you? How was school for you? Were you like the popular girl? Were you a peleonera? Cuéntanos un poquito de todo eso. How was high school
Oh my
for Pau?
goodness. I don't know if I was popular or not. Like, it's weird because back in the day, Facebook was very poppin'. I know there's still a lot of people that use Facebook to this day.
A lot of people.
But over there in Colorado, it was super popular, and I was like a Facebook comedian.
No, so you would do like little Facebook videos?
Dude, yes, and I would do like just like stupid posts. Like I would like find random posts on Twitter or whatever and post them onto Facebook, or just come up with things in my head. Like, I don't know my process back then, but I was a little Facebook comedian, and so I guess I was popular in that sense, but at the same time I was like, you know, I had like a few friends, and it's hard to remember. I was like popular but not popular. I did have friends, but I do feel like I've always been a little bit more introverted, a little bit more to myself.
Yeah.
So I was, I guess, a little bit of a loner, you could say.
How were you like in class? Do you feel like te aprendías las materias, or do you were,
Oh my
were you
gosh.
a little mencita?
No,
You're like, were
thinking
you?
I'm a mencita. It's
No, like,
crazy.
were you good at school?
Oh, I was excellent at school. I had a 4.2 GPA, I believe I graduated with. So I was like in some
shit.
advanced classes, and school was just, I've always been like the type of person that if I set my mind on something, I'm going to do it. And that was how I felt about school. I was like, okay, I'm going to keep really good grades. I don't know why. I guess I just felt the need to.
Yeah.
I feel like I
prove to
wanted
yourself,
the
maybe.
validation
Yeah.
of having that. And even all throughout growing up, like throughout elementary school, throughout middle school, I was always praised for being so smart academically and just doing very well in school. So I always kept up with my grades. Like, even when I would get like a B, that was like the end of the world for me. But I don't understand how I did it though, because when I look back on school, I don't remember a lot of the things that I learned. It sucks. Like, I wish my brain would have retained that information, but I don't know how I did it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I would cheat sometimes. Not all the time though. There was a couple times that I cheated, but other than that, I was just good, and I didn't even have to, like, no era matada. I wasn't always studying and doing all this. I just kind of grasped the concepts very quickly and just.
How was it like after like high school? Did you go to college?
No, I didn't go to college. There's like a part of me that wishes that I did. Look, I really do value education. I think we should all be as educated as possible. Just that for me, I just felt like I've always wanted to do my own thing. I've always wanted to be my own boss. I've always felt like that is what comes very natural to me. And it makes sense because when I was younger, I hated authority. So, you know, that is something that stuck with me a little bit. Like, I want to be able to have full control of things. And that's something that made me not pursue college. But it's like something that I battle with sometimes. Like, maybe I should have. But then there are people that I've talked to that have been like straight up told me, and I'm not saying that this is true or not, people that have gone to college that are like, I feel like I kind of wasted my time in college.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's all about what you make of it. And like I said, in school, I didn't learn much. That's because the way that I was taught in school, I guess it wasn't in a way where I could fully grasp the concepts that I was learning. So now I try to focus on just like learning as much as I can on my own time. And it's something I do very much prioritize.
What was it like el momento? Obviamente nos cuentas that growing up, you were like an A+ student. You were always very estudiosa. What was it like when you had to tell your parents, ¿saben qué? Yo sé que me conocen como Paula estudiosa, pero yo al colegio no quiero ir. What was their reaction? ¿Cómo tomaron la noticia? Cuéntanos un poquito de eso.
Oh my gosh. So I always kind of like sprinkled it in to my mom. Like I was like, I don't want to go to college. I really didn't like school. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. As much as I did well, I did not like it. So I would like throw little sprinkles at her and stuff. And I actually, when I told her I wasn't going to college, I actually filmed a whole mukbang on it on my YouTube channel. I was doing YouTube already by that time. And I sat her down and I just like expressed to her how I really felt at that time. I honestly don't know what I said back then.
So you were breaking the news on the video?
Yeah, but she already knew, like she had an idea
okay.
already. I obviously had shared with her how I felt, but this time was like, I'm fully like telling you, I now have just fully decided that I'm not going. And even for me, it was like an internal battle because during that time when everyone was applying to colleges and stuff, I was like, what should I do? Like, I'm doing good here with my social media, but I don't know if I should do both and I don't really like school, but it was such an internal battle and I'm an overthinker.
Yeah.
So I overthunk myself. Is that how you say overthunk?
Overthought myself.
I overthought myself like to the grave, literally like every day. It was my constant thought pattern. They were disappointed, but it wasn't to the point where they tried to like have authority over me and say like, well, or you know how those parents do like ultimatums.
Tienes que ir, yeah. Si no, ponte a trabajar.
Si no, hasta luego, te sales de mi casa. They weren't like that. They were, still supportive of me. And my mom did see that. She knew that I knew what I was doing, kind of.
And I feel like, going back with what you said, I totally agree that I feel like education is so important. Yo también, now at this point in my life, me hubiera gustado que me hubiera quedado en la escuela because I think I only went for like a month and then I dropped out because during that time también I was starting to like do social media. So it was very much like, do I put all my fucking eggs in this basket or in this one? And obviously I decided to go full force with social media. Gracias a Dios for both of us, it worked out. But I really do think that, although school is so important, education is like so valuable. I feel like you said, if you have a mentality of being a boss and always wanting to like salir adelante, that's all you really need, because there's a lot of people that don't have an education pero tienen las ganas de salir adelante y salen.
And they're willing to learn and they're willing to expand and grow their mind, even if it may not be through college necessarily, but in different ways. And that's like completely fine. I think that it's also about everyone learns different. Everyone has different skill sets. So that's also something to keep in mind.
Pero vayan a la escuela, amigas, por favor, no miren este podcast y digan, ay, pues Pau y Alan le fue bien, hasta a mí también I'm going to try it out. I really do think it just kind of follow your heart. I feel like if you really want to go to school because you want to do it, do it. Y si no quieres ir, make sure you have plans and goals and ambitions. Platicamos un poquito de eso. Me estabas contando that at the time you were already doing YouTube. Obviamente ahorita te vemos all over the For You page, con una plataforma grandísima. Pero yo quiero saber cómo empezó todo eso. What inspired you to be like, you know what? Voy a agarrar mi cámara, me voy a grabar y voy a subir videos porque uno nunca sabe qué pueda pasar. What was that moment for you? ¿Y cómo empezó toda esa journey?
Oh my gosh. So I used to love, I've said this a few times, I feel like, but I loved this girl named Bethany Moda, and she was a really great YouTuber. She was a beauty guru, and she just, like, I was a troubled kid, right? Okay. So her videos, they brought peace to my life. They made me feel like, it was like finally I could disconnect from my world and just get into her world and see her life. And it was, it was nice at that age to have that. And so I was like, wow, I want to be able to do that for somebody else. I want to be that person for somebody else and be able to just bring somebody a sense of entertainment and just be, and even now, further from just entertainment, also a sense of inspiration and purpose, all of those, good feelings. I think that definitely inspired me. And also, I remember just being really young and literally sitting there and I would just have random conversations. Like, have you ever sat there and just thought of like
scenarios of just talking to yourself?
You're acting like you're filming a video, but you're not filming it, and you're talking. You've done that, right?
Yo me hablo solo all the time, dude, and my boyfriend be looking at me like, are you talking to me? I'm like, no, I'm prepping myself for a video or some shit. Yeah.
That's so funny. And I know I'm not the only one. I've literally seen videos on this on TikTok. But so I would do that sometimes, and I would just have these like really deep conversations at like 10, 11, 12 years old. And I was like, oh wow, like I really want to be heard. I really want to be able to one day talk about this and for people to care about what I have to say and be able to share my opinion and to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I literally remember being, and I think also at that age, I didn't feel very heard. I didn't feel very much like people.
Understood.
I didn't feel heard, understood. So that was another reason I was like, well, yeah, like I want people to hear me out. I want to be seen in that way. I think that was like kind of like something, a shadow of mine that I had.
Porque sentías como que no te ponían atención en tu casa?
Yeah, kind of like that. Like I felt misunderstood. And as well as I just wanted to share my thoughts and be heard by them.
Te empiezas a hacer el YouTube. What was that first video that you're like, oh shit, we're going viral or it's getting views? What was that like? Cuéntanos de eso.
Oh my gosh. Dude, I'm like, what was my first? I'm not sure which video was the first one to do well, but I do know at one point I started doing public interviews and those started doing very, very well. Like very well. It was amazing. It was like, I always knew that it was going to happen. Always. I knew that this was what I wanted. And I would say when I was younger, like, I'm going to be 18. I'm going to move to LA. I'm going to be a YouTuber. I'm going to do all these things. And it all ended up coming true. And so when this started to happen, I was like, oh my gosh, like finally it's happening for me. And it was just an amazing feeling. I was so extremely grateful. I still am to this day, so extremely grateful. And yeah, I remember actually, this was like my first trip outside of Mexico. Which I'm very thankful that my mom paid for me to go on this trip. My school had a trip to Europe and it was a tour thingy and we went to 6 different countries. We went to Germany, Poland, we went to Austria, we went to Czech. Girl, I don't even remember the rest of the places. No, I do, but I don't want to butcher it. We went there and I had posted one of my public interviews and I remember on that trip, that video just blew up. It's so crazy. Like, numbers I had never seen before. It got to, like, over 1 million views. And I was like, wow.
On TikTok or YouTube?
On YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I started off. And I was just like, oh, my gosh. Like, this is my dream. It's coming true. And it was such an exciting time. And, yeah, I guess that's, like, when I first was like, oh, wow, it's happening.
Like, it's happening now. You know what's crazy? I remember cuando yo te encontré, it was when you were blowing up on TikTok, when you were doing those videos. I don't know if it was like COVID skit? Time, where it was like, oh, is that your third plate? Or like, is that your third husband? Do you remember those? Gosh, yes. Those were so funny. I remember you would pop up on my For You page so constantly. Y me acuerdo que te seguí. And then when I started like diving into your like content, I noticed that you had been doing YouTube like years prior to you even blowing up on TikTok. Like you really were like an OG. Like you were doing this shit since what, like 14, 15
I was 14,
maybe?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Obviamente, you know, you start posting and these videos start picking up. What was the moment for you that you're like, you know what? I can make this my full-time job. I can actually go live in LA because I can afford it. What was that moment for you?
Oh my gosh. After every question, I'm like, oh my gosh.
You're like, oh my gosh. You're like, slow down, Alan. That's like fucking 5 questions in one. Literally.
That moment, okay. I guess that moment was when, before knowing, okay, I can go and live in LA, there was another moment, which the moment for me where I was like, okay, I know this is going to work out for me. I was like 16 years old and I was making like $5,000-$6,000 a month.
Off of
which
YouTube.
Is crazy at
it's
16.
Crazy, yeah,
At 16 years old, yeah, off of YouTube alone. And I remember just being like, oh my gosh, like I see this being something so huge because at that time, I think that's more than even like my parents were making.
I think that's even more than minimum wage now. And we're talking about like crazy. Years ago. Yeah, it's
years
crazy.
Back. And so that was a moment for me where I was like, wow, like I really am like making really good money with this. I really want to keep pursuing it. And obviously, like, I love doing this. It's paying me on top of that. And so that was that. And then whenever it came to moving to LA, it was at the time when I had a couples channel at the time, and that was like popping off crazy.
Like it blew up.
Crazy. Yeah, insane. Like we gained we got to like 400,000 subscribers in like 2 months.
Oh,
I want to
shit.
say.
And on YouTube, I feel like it's one of
On
those platforms that is
YouTube.
harder to gain.
It was crazy. Like those numbers were insane. Yeah. And that was when we were like, oh wow, we really can.
Like we
do
can
this.
fucking move.
Yeah, and it was always my dream. He kind of just like followed along with me because, you know, I honestly, I don't know how I would have done it by myself at that time. I wasn't as independent as I am now, and like moving to somewhere like Los Angeles.
By yourself, not
yeah,
knowing
that's like a
anyone.
huge shift. But yeah.
I remember, I feel like when that happened, I feel like, yeah, you were already more established as an influencer. So I remember all that playing out. Me acuerdo que se movieron hasta acá. Tuvieron hasta problemas, ¿no? Con un, like the apartment or something like that.
Oh my gosh. Well, it was a whole thing.
Yeah,
well,
I
first
remember,
of all,
like, did you guys get scammed or what was it? No me acuerdo exactamente.
we moved into a content house. Before we actually moved out to LA on our own, we had moved into a content house, which it sounded like amazing for us because we're like, okay, like we're going to have free rent. Like we're not going to have to pay anything. We're going to go live in this really nice mansion. Like it was a win-win kind of situation.
You're like, dream come true, girl.
Literally. And then we quickly realized it was too good to be true. I think the people that were running that company were like maybe like scamming or something. I don't think they were paying the rent.
Oh, shit.
I don't think they were paying the rent. And so after a month of being there, the house like all fell apart and crumbled. Yeah, the house.
Y les dijeron, sálganse.
Sálganse. So when we initially went into the content house, they really pressured us into going right away. So imagine moving from your hometown, your state or whatever. We packed as much as we could. They were like, okay, we need you here within like a day. Yes. So it was a very sudden decision for us. Like it was like, okay, like you need to come now. So we get there, and it's, you know, it's a weird dynamic living in a content house. Just to give you a picture of it, basically every morning we would have meetings like at 9 a.m, and it was kind of pointless meetings. Like we would just sit there. They would be like, okay, you need to film this, and then that's it. Like it was kind of, I don't know if they just wanted us up early or what the case was.
So what was kind of like your guys' purpose as content creators? Like, were you guys making money for them, or what? How does that work? Or nomás dijeron, vénganse a vivir aquí, hagan contenido y chinga su madre, we'll pay the rent. What was that like? Because that sounds kind of, I've always kind of wondered about content houses. Like, how does that work?
So we had to make content for the content house TikTok account. So we would do videos for them. But outside of that, honestly, I don't know how we contributed, like me and my ex-boyfriend specifically. I don't know how we really contributed to that, because they weren't bringing like ad or brand deals for us or anything like that. What I'm assuming is that they would bring in deals for certain creators, and they would get a cut, and then that would be part of like the rent
money. Yeah.
That's what I'm assuming. But honestly, we were just there for such a short amount of time that I feel like we weren't even a part of that.
Cuéntanos un poquito, obviamente nos cuentas that you guys rush into this decision, you guys move in, and a month later les dices, ¿saben qué? No hubo para la renta, sálganse. What was that moment for you? Obviamente you were probably stressed out. Did it ever cross your mind like, you know what? Let's go back. My little dream is crushed. We got to go back home. What was that like for you?
We did go back home. We did go back home because we were like, oh my gosh, we're scared. Like, we don't feel prepared yet to fully get our own place here.
Yeah.
Like, this is happening too fast. So we're like, okay, let's go back and let's like get ourselves settled. And so that's what we did. But it was embarrassing. Like, we had literally posted all about how we moved to LA and we were so excited and it was so cool. And then boom, our dream was crushed. And so it was just like, oh, you guys, we came back. And when we left, we had done like this thing with all our friends back home, and like you know, saying our goodbyes. Like, oh, like we love you.
I'm emotional for you to be back a week later. Literally.
It was so bad. But then we basically got ourselves together. We were back home for like, so this had happened in the summertime. We were back home until January. So January came around and we moved to LA now, like for good, on our own terms. And moving out is already a whole thing in itself, especially when you don't have credit, you don't have, girl.
Yeah.
Literally, we had to pay our full year of rent up front.
How much was that, if you don't mind?
I think it was like 30,000, 35.
A un putazo. That's crazy.
Yeah, but we were like, what are we gonna do? Nobody wants us. Like nobody.
All stray cats, bitch. You know, like no one wants to shelter us.
Literally.
That's crazy. That must have been intense. Like, imagine dropping 30K, but also must have felt good. Like, once you guys started making money, you're like, well, we're kind of living rent free.
Yeah.
Not really rent free, but
that's
like.
That's how we saw it. We're like, all right, like it is what it is. And honestly, now that I think about it, we really did take a big kind of like chance on ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of money to just drop and be like, okay, like let's move here and let's do this, when, you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of uncertainty that comes with being on social media and everything.
During that time, I remember seeing everything that was happening, pero rápidamente, you said, you know what? I fall down, I get the fuck back up, and I'm back in fucking LA. Quiero platicar of how lucrative social media can be. Tú a tu edad de 16 años, tú ya estabas ganando y generando casi 5 a 6 mil dólares al mes. Vemos mucho que de tanto dinero que gana lo que viene siendo, you know, social media influencer, también miramos mucho que lo malgastamos. I fucking malgastar mi dinero all the time, pero tú no, amiga, me estabas contando anoche that you have investment properties in Mexico. Cuéntanos un poquito más de eso. What made you get into like investing in properties and why in Mexico? Y cuéntanos todo ese proceso.
Okay, so I've always been very much somebody who I love learning about like finance, real estate, all those types of things. So when I first started making money, I was like, okay, how can I build this up beyond what it is? And so I started researching and stuff, and I learned about real estate, and I learned how insane real estate is when it comes to building wealth and how important it is. That was my goal actually for about 3 years, to buy my first property, whatever that was going to be. I had no idea that it was going to be in Mexico. I had no idea what it was going to be. But every year I was like, okay, I want to invest in a property. And then the next year would come, I want to invest in a property. And I wouldn't do it.
No se te hacía,
No se me hacía. And I think it's because, honestly, it is something that can be intimidating. Especially when you're first getting to know all of these different terms. You're getting to know the market, how it works and everything. And it was very intimidating for me. And so I feel like I was scared to bite the bullet until one day I was on the phone with my grandma. And she was just telling me about like a conocida, and she was telling me that she was actually moving to Cancun, and that her conocida has a brother in Cancun who owns a real estate company. He's a real estate agent. She was telling me that she was also going to be investing in real estate over there, the conocida. And so I was like, oh, wow, like that's really cool, actually. I want to know more. I kind of want to see if maybe this is something that I can do. Because at that point, I just had like, a good amount of money kind of sitting there waiting on me to make a move. I got in contact with the brother that is a real estate agent, and then he started showing me properties. I planned out a trip to go to Cancun. I went all by myself. I went and met with him and his sister, and they showed me around a bunch of properties. And I'm not going to lie, it was like a very intense kind of thing. Like for me, I still feel like I'm not at the point where I feel very comfortable with all of this. I feel like I'm diving into something that I don't fully understand as well as I would want to understand. But, I did all my tours. I did my research as well as I could with everything. And I decided, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to invest in this property. I ended up purchasing 2 condos. I paid one of them up front, and the other one, I think I did like a 30% down payment, and they're actually not done being built yet. One of them was actually supposed to be done by now. Okay. They're kind of running behind. I know they had, what did they have?
So it's recently? Like in a tourist place.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Tulum. In Tulum, actually. One of them is in Tulum. The other one is Playa del Carmen. And the reason I decided on Tulum is because of the growth that it's expected to have. They actually recently opened up an airport there. I think last December.
I heard,
Yeah, and they also opened up El Tren Maya, which that train is going to be able to take you from Tulum to Cancun, anywhere in between. And they didn't have that before. So it was kind of a drag for people to go, like, get to the Cancun airport and then have to go on car or whatever, go to all the way down to Tulum, which is like, I don't want to say like 2 hours away.
It was like a hassle back then.
It was a hassle. And so this train makes it so easy and fast and stuff. And that's one reason why I was like, okay, I want to invest in that. And I don't know if I was like also on conspiracy TikTok, or I don't know exactly what was going on with this, but I was just hearing a lot about how the US dollar was depreciating in value. And I was also scared for that. I was like, I'm scared. Like, what if I invest in the US and then things don't go go well, and like I don't know what to do. So I was like, maybe it's better to invest over here. I still don't know about if I made the right choice with that, but I do know that I'm very happy that I did get those properties, and I'm very excited for the future when it comes to real estate, and specifically for those properties. I do want to continue to invest here in the United States eventually and everything. So I guess I'm just waiting to find a good opportunity to
Quiero
do that.
platicar de eso, primeramente, do you come from like a family of money?
No.
Y te lo pregunto
I don't.
porque you mentioned something that I feel like I can identify, nos cuentas that for a long time, you kind of were like sitting on this opportunity because buying a home or buying property is a big deal. Do you feel like the reason why you kind of dwelled on it and kind of was stalling on it was because you grew up not having much, and now that you're in the position of being able to like be like, you know what, voy a poner mis dólares aquí o acá, and it kind of became like, oh shit, like I've never seen anyone around me growing up being in this position? Or what do you feel like
It's exactly that. I didn't have that guidance, and my guidance was just as much as I learned from reading or watching videos, and that was my, knowledge that I had on it. So I didn't have like any firsthand experience, or not firsthand, but my family didn't have that firsthand experience. So yeah, it's intimidating. It is very intimidating. If you take this risk, it's like you don't have that foundation. Your family doesn't have that foundation for you. So there's more peso to those decisions. They hold a lot of weight.
I feel like, you're doing the damn thing. You're so fucking young, and you're already creating generational wealth, which, like you said, I feel like that's a goal for everyone. That should be a goal. Do you feel like being so young and already doing this, do you feel like it comes with a lot of pressure? If so, ¿cuáles son las presiones que tú sientes que agarras?
I think it definitely does come with a good amount of pressure, but I feel like in a way, I can handle it. Like, I feel like I was put in that position to be able to handle it. But I guess the main pressure for me is like I want to be able to build something that's going to outlive myself, and that's going to also help my family. Like that's one of my biggest things. So right now I'm really, really focused on just building that foundation for myself and for my family, and just for my future in general. I think it's very important. So I try to be smart with my money. I try not to, waver too much. There was a point too where I felt kind of like, I've outgrown this, but there was definitely a point where I felt kind of resentment, I guess you can say, in a way, for my family, in the way that I was just like, why couldn't you guys have set up this foundation that I'm now trying to set up? And now I look at it differently. I think it's valid, though, to feel that way. And I think two things can be true at once. I think you can feel that way, but you can also acknowledge, like, hey, but at the end of the day, my parents did do a lot for me. They came to the United States. They made those big moves. That was their move that they made. And I acknowledge that too now. But at one point I did feel kind of like I wish you guys would have started your business, or I wish you would have, done something a little bit different. But I know I can't blame them for that, and I don't judge them for that at all. I know everybody's path is different, and just because this is what I'm doing doesn't mean that they had to do the same thing.
Exactly, like you said, it's important to understand que igual como tú tienes esta oportunidad, a lo mejor ellos nunca la tuvieron, and it's important that you at such a young age, you're taking on this opportunity. Today's episode is brought to you by Alma. Alma believes that therapy is more impactful when you feel heard and understood. That's why they help people find a therapist who really gets them, the right someone to talk to, not just anyone. Alma can help you find a therapist who gets you. When you browse the directory, you can filter by what you want to focus on, for example, anxiety, relationship, or big life transitions, as well as any preference around gender, sexuality, faith, and more. Alma can help you find a therapist who takes your insurance. People who find in-network care through Alma save an average of 77% on the cost of therapy. It's easy to get started with Alma. Browse the directory without creating an account or sharing payment information. You can book a free consultation call with any therapist you're interested in seeing. These 15-minute calls give you a chance to see if they're a good fit for you, so you can find someone you really click with. Even though I'm currently not in therapy, I know the importance of having someone in my life who truly understands where I'm coming from. For those of you guys that follow me, obviamente ustedes saben that the past month and a half has been one of the hardest months of my life, and going through everything I've been through this past month with my grandpa's passing, I wish I could have been in therapy prior and during the process to really help me kind of navigate these feelings of grief y todo lo que he estado sintiendo este último mes, amigas. Pero no es muy tarde to join therapy. If you've been considering finding a licensed professional to help you work through your own life challenges, give Alma a try. Alma can help you find the right therapist for you, not just anyone. Visit helloalma.com/Alan to get started and schedule a free consultation today. That's helloalma.com/Alan. Quiero platicar de la importancia of healing. In December of 2022, you posted a video where you documented 6 months of your breakup. And este video se hizo viral because, you were being very real and very raw with your emotions. Y quiero platicar un poquito de eso. Cuéntanos, how was your healing process? Obviamente from going from being in a really long relationship to accepting that it was done. What was that process like? Y qué sientes tú that got you through that process?
I would say that time in my life was very transformational for me. It was the most transformational moment probably in my whole life, because losing someone that I was so attached to, that was basically my whole world, really caused me to have to face myself. And it caused me to just see, it caused me to see all of the shadows that I was hiding. Kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier when I went to therapy and stuff like that. That was another factor of it. The breakup really did just change me, and it forced me to grow, not only beyond growing from the relationship and everything. It forced me to grow as a person and really look inward. What am I really looking for in life? What am I missing in my life? Who am I? It caused me to really analyze myself and just get to know myself at a really different level. But honestly, the thing that really helped me get through that was just, there was a lot of factors that went into it. It was, first of all, therapy. That was part of it. Another thing was journaling. I journaled so much. My mind was racing constantly. My mind is already always racing. So I had to be able to get my thoughts away from my head.
Yeah.
So that was another thing. My family, my friends, they helped me a lot in my healing journey. It was a lot of things that went into it, but honestly, yeah, it was a very hard time.
We see you healed now. Do you feel like at the time, was there ever a moment where you're like, I can't do this? I can't overcome this breakup?
I did have a moment where I really broke down, and it was just, it's not that I thought I can never get through this, but it felt like I was hitting rock bottom, and I felt really, really, really lost and really alone, and even with my own self. And so this is how you know you're bad. I had to sign up for therapy at 3 a.m. because I was really worried about myself. Yeah, I signed up late at night one night, and I think I talked about that too in my healing video that I had made, but yeah.
Obviamente, I feel like therapy, I feel like a lot of people have this negative connotation, oh no, yo no estoy loco, yo no voy a ir con un therapist because I'm good, but I feel like it is very important to seek professional help.
Yeah.
Tú durante ese tiempo, what do you feel like you learned about yourself that was so life-changing to where you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize this, but now that my therapist is explaining it to me, I can see why I was going through so many things. Now it all makes sense.
I think that I really learned that I was I never felt whole. That's what I learned. And it wasn't necessarily my therapist that led me to this realization. It was kind of me on my own. But I was like, wait, I've never really felt like I was whole and complete. It felt like my partner in my relationship completed me. And so it was kind of a moment where I had to face myself and just truly give myself the acceptance that I always craved, and give myself the understanding that I always craved too. And yeah, I just I came to that realization. I was like, wow, I need to be there for myself. I need, because nobody else is gonna be here for me the same way that I can. And yeah, that was my moment.
Una de las cosas que me encanta de tu contenido and just of your whole healing process is how advocate you've been about healing the right way. Miramos mucho that a lot of women or men, once they're done with a relationship, they go on and get into a new relationship or just start dating really quickly to try to, heal or, fill in that void. How important was it for you to be fully healed before you jumped into something new?
Honestly, it was crucial because, okay, the way I see it is if you immediately go onto the next thing, onto the next person, whatever it is, you lose out on actually knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Like you don't actually, I just feel like at that point, the relationship is simply a distraction. Like I don't feel comfortable being in a relationship or being in anything if I'm using it as a way to distract myself from myself.
Yeah.
And from my situation that I'm going to. Like I want to fully be where I am because it's something that's gonna better me and because it's something that's good for me, not because I miss somebody else and not because I can't face my feelings and I can't sit with my feelings. Because I know that that happens with a lot of people. They don't want to sit through the feelings because it's hard.
Yeah.
Like it is not easy to have to actually face
and
the
feel
dark
what you
parts
gotta
of
feel.
yourself. Yeah, it's not easy. But that's why I think it's honestly crucial because then you end up in a cycle of toxicity, I feel like, because then you go to the next person and then, well, if you're not even healed, now you're going to hurt that person. And it's too much. I think you should always just focus on, your inner work before jumping into anything. It was just something where I was like, I have to work on this because I can't really function throughout life without healing this right now. So it was like not really, I didn't give it a second thought, honestly.
Quiero platicar de algo que recientemente, you shared. Before we get to what you shared, quiero platicar about the co-parenting. No, amigas, no tuvieron hijos. You guys co-parented a dog for almost 2 years. And I feel like whenever you guys would talk about that, I feel like you guys would get a lot of backlash because people would be like, oh, that's just an excuse to continue being in each other's life. Cuéntanos un poquito de eso. ¿Cómo empezó esa idea de like, oh, you know what, let's co-parent? And how was it like co-parenting your pet with your ex?
Yeah, so we were both really attached to our dog. Honestly, he meant and means the world to us. And so when we broke up, it was just something that naturally kind of happened. Like neither of us wanted to let go of the dog. And people always were like, it's just an excuse. You just want to see each other. Genuinely, that was never where I was coming from, like ever. For me, it was like, I want to see my dog. Like I love him. I want to spend time with him. So we would do that. We would drop him off like every week. We would have him on and off. I understand why people feel a certain way about it because it is strange.
Yeah.
I will admit, like it is, I guess, a little bit weird, but we just had that really close bond to our dog that it was just a natural thing. But then eventually it got to the point where I always knew that this couldn't be forever.
Yeah.
Like from the beginning, I knew it wasn't going to be forever.
Like you were conscious.
I was conscious of it. I kind of wish now looking back on it, even though I love my dog so much, or I guess he's not technically my dog anymore because we don't parent him together anymore, but I love him so much. But sometimes I do think maybe it wasn't the best decision for us to do that for 2 years because then we got even more attached to him.
Yeah.
Because we had him for, I think, like a year when we broke up. So then it's like going from being attached for only 1 year to being attached for 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
In total. So it was like, oh, now I have to make a decision. Am I gonna continue to do this? Or I guess I had to really think very logically, even though I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I really didn't want to. I wanted to still see the dog. I still, You
were thinking emotionally for a long time. Like you're like, I
time.
love this dog. I don't want to have to let go.
Exactly. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, well, seeing things logically, he lives in a house. And at that time, he lived with another dog as well. So it's like, it makes a lot of sense. They have a backyard. I didn't have that, and I wasn't able to provide that for him. On top of that, it was to the point where I'm like, okay, well, how long is this really going to last?
Yeah.
Like, how long can we make this work? One day we're going to move away from each other, or one day maybe we're going to if he were to get a girlfriend, it wouldn't be a problem with me, right? But maybe the girlfriend would have a problem with us co-parenting, just like a lot of different things. And I just got to the point where I'm like, okay, it's now or never. Like, it's either we stop right now, or what are we going to do? Like 5 years down the line, stop, and we're going to be even more attached, and it's going to be just pointless. So it was just that kind of thing. And it was such a hard decision to make.
Do you feel like co-parenting at the beginning made it a little harder for you to like really heal?
Honestly, I don't think that it really had a big effect, just because it was so like, it was strictly that. It was strictly, this is our dog together and that's what it is. And we definitely have boundaries. And I think that's another reason why people liked to come at us for this and be like, oh, like you guys are still like over here doing stuff and you're, and I'm like, no, we have boundaries. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think it really affected, especially because either way, I see him out at like events and things like that. Like we're in the same industry, so we're bound to run into each other. So it was just kind of like that type of same thing.
Cuéntanos un poquito de eso. You were no longer going to be co-parenting with your ex y le ibas a dar full custody of Woody. What led you to like finally making that decision?
I guess I finally thought it out logically. And at that time, I was also always traveling. So I was like, okay, like this is just, it doesn't even feel fair at this point. It feels like too much change for him, for the dog. And so that was kind of like the breaking point for me. And I don't remember exactly how I think I just like told him one day, like straight up, like, okay, I honestly don't know if we can keep doing this. And we had conversations about like, what is this going to lead to one day? Like, are we going to be able to do this? And it was just that day that I was like, okay, we're going to have to stop. And it's very hard. It is very hard. I'm still there. Like, he recently moved out and I was taking care of Woody for a while. For like 2 weeks, and I'm always gonna be there whenever he needs. Like, at the end of the day, I love Woody so much. I love him so much that I'll always be there. If I ever need to be there, I will be there. But yeah, I miss him. It's just that I know that I can't keep doing that.
Yeah. Quiero platicar de algo. Obviamente you've healed and you've been actually talking about this a lot on social media.
What?
You're back in your dating era. 2 years later, estás back on the market. Cuéntanos un poquito de eso. What was it like the first time you went on a date after not going on dates for so long? Cuéntanos de eso.
It was so nerve-wracking. And you know what? The first time I went on a date, it was kind of like the first time I ever went into the dating scene in general. Because when I met my ex-boyfriend, we were in high school. Like, I was never, like, going on dates and, like, So this was, like, my real first date. Because my first date with my ex-boyfriend, we went to prom together. That was our first date. So this was, like, my real first date. And we went to a restaurant. We had dinner. And it was scary. I didn't even know what to talk about. I like looked up beforehand on TikTok, like what to talk about on a date. I honestly was like, I don't know what to expect. It went well. I mean, the guy, he was cool, whatever. He was so funny. He was actually super tall. He was like 6'4". He's like, I want to go to Disneyland. And I was like, And I low-key ghosted him afterwards, which I don't condone ghosting people anymore. But, back then it was
it was a different Pau.
It was a different Pau. I've grown.
Why'd you ghost him? Nomás por nomás?
I just was like, I don't know if I want to keep talking to you. And so he wanted to go to Disneyland with me. And I was like, we're going to stick out.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to stick out bad. So, normally people come up to me and they're like, oh, I love your videos and stuff. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like people are going to recognize us. They're gonna
record it, post it online.
Oh yeah. Yes. So I was like, no, we're not. Actually, I have to stop talking to you.
And at the time, were you public about like going on dates or todavía no?
Yeah, that was my first. I actually did like a get ready with me for a date video that day, and it did really well. And that was that first time that I actually went on a date after the breakup.
Ahorita yo pienso que ya eres toda una experta when it comes. Well, not like experta. Like you've got on a lot of this. Yeah. No, but I feel like you've stepped into a few like situations and you've been in a couple of dates. Mm-hmm. What are tips that for the girls or the guys watching at home that are barely getting into the dating scene? What are tips or things that you're like, what, you need to know this before you go on a date?
The first thing I want to say is just when you go on a date, don't go into it thinking like, oh, this is gonna be my husband or whatever.
Yeah.
Go into it seeing it as, okay, let's see who this person is. I want to get to know this person and we'll take it from there. Don't go into it already like trying to impress them, trying to be somebody you're not. Go into it to genuinely get to know them. That's literally the point of a date, to get to know each other and then see if you want to continue dating, if you want to keep getting to know each other. Also for the girls in general, when it comes to dating in general, just like date people that want to date you. What I mean by that is choose the man that is actively choosing you. Don't go out of your way to like try to pursue a guy that hasn't even shown interest in you. I honestly have realized that the dating experiences that are so much more worth it are when the man is actually the one there trying to pursue you and actually shows genuine interest in you.
You know, you were actually the talk of the town. No. A TikTok, not like that, like in my house, like between me and my boyfriend and my best friend. There was a TikTok you posted from one of your podcasts, and it really sat with me. And I used that analogy and that example that you were giving to a few other people. And I'm like, oh, you know, you have this much power, and it's real and it's true. As women, you really, era el video donde estabas platicando that as women, you have the power to pick, you know, your husband and the father of your children. And I feel like that is very true. And I feel like a lot of women don't understand how much power they have, and they settle for like whatever, the bare minimum. And, you know, they end up in sticky situations, you know, baby daddy problems or just anything. Cuéntanos un poquito de esto and just elaborate el poder de una mujer.
Well, I think we're very much fed like, oh, you need to find a man. You need to do this and that for a man. It's kind of like as women, you get fed that narrative.
Yeah.
Like you need to live your life for a man. And a man will see you, and if a man deems you worthy, then you're worthy, which is completely wrong. I think a man will never see the worth in a woman who doesn't see the worth in herself. I think that's why I honestly have had, you know, good experiences with dating, because I always come as like, okay, I am worthy. Like even when I was telling you like I didn't feel like I was completely whole, I still knew like I'm not gonna put up with just anything.
Yeah.
And so as a woman, you really need to have that sense of empowerment and really carry that with you through life, and never try to, just don't do things to please a man. Do things to make yourself happy, and trust me, that's going to attract a way better quality man than if you just go through life like, okay, like I'm gonna dress a certain way just because this is what a man is gonna like. I'm gonna act a certain way. I'm gonna allow this person to disrespect me. I'm gonna allow them to treat me however they want to treat me because I want them to pick me.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's literally the opposite of what you should be doing. And I think that just having that mentality is gonna save you from a lot of really bad situations.
And I feel like, you know, another thing that you had mentioned is the responsibility that as a woman you have. You know, at the end of the day, you know, things can happen. No estamos diciendo that like even if you go into a relationship and this person, you know, se te pinta as the best person in the world, things can happen. You know, people can change, and maybe like how you met him is not. But like I think it is very important for women to like be like, you know what, I'm responsible for who I choose. Because estabas contando tú, and it really, when I was hearing that podcast and like the little clips, I was like, you know what, I never really thought about it in that like perspective. Yeah. Like women do have the power to be, you said something about we have the power to choose who we want. And it is true. Si tú no quieres a alguien, aunque el guy esté a huevo, chingue y chingue, lo mandas a volar y ya.
Exactly. And you have to really like believe that you're valuable, because if not, it's like you just waste your time.
Yeah.
You truly just waste your time. You have to know your worth, because if not, then it's like you just start to overlook red flags.
Yeah.
And it's like that's where you actually see who the person is. And oftentimes that's how you get yourself in a bad situation. You overlook the first little thing. Because why? You're like, no, it's fine. Like, I really like this person. It doesn't matter. Then you overlook the next thing. And then it's like now you're in this cycle where you can't get out, because now you're in too deep. So it's really important to carry that when you go throughout dating, especially because in the early stages, it's like you don't have to, you can go out on dates and stuff with someone, and it doesn't mean they have to be your everything right away. Like you can actually just go get to know them and genuinely see who they are and what type of person they are. And you have to actually think long term. Like, okay, what would it be like to raise a family with this person? Like, is this person somebody that I would want my children to be like? Yeah. But when you go in like without knowing your worth and just like, oh, la 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 la, whatever, it's like
you're like, oh, like they're gonna treat you like that. Literally, they're gonna be like, la 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 la. Literally,
te tienes que poner busa. Basically, is what I'm saying.
Because men literally will go as far as you allow them. They're going to continue to treat you bad if you allow that. But
The
if
way you
you
allow them.
put your boundaries, or if you're like, you know what, you treat me this way, I'm out, el güey va a cambiar si en verdad te quiere. Pero si no,
Exactly.
pues you save yourself from like being in a situation
Yeah.
that you shouldn't have been in. Cuando tú empiezas a pensar así, porque obviamente that's a very wise way to think. When did you feel like, you know what, I'm going to attract a man that is worthy of me?
It's like a mix of moments that have created that mentality inside of me. First of all was like my mom and my grandma telling me this, like you know, you need to choose wisely when you get older. Obviously seeing it not work out with like my mom and my dad, and then seeing firsthand certain relationships that I'm just like, okay, I don't want to be like that. That was one of the things. Another one is just simply now that I've been dating and going on dates, I see relationships differently. And I'm like, and even having been in a long-term relationship, I see it differently now too. Like, love is very important. It's so important, but it's not everything in a relationship. And that's where the switch kind of flipped inside of me, where I was like, okay, like, even though you love somebody, you could love someone so much, but you may not be fully compatible. And that's okay. And I'm willing to walk away from anything personally. That's how I am. Which maybe it sounds bad,
but it's also you're saving yourself.
You're
from
protecting
like,
yourself
exactly.
at the end of the
I don't
day.
think it sounds bad. I feel like it sounds wise. It can happen to either or. Like go into it like, ¿qué le hace? Que pase lo que pase. And it's like, no, tienes que estar lista. Ahorita donde no
Exactly.
estés interesada completamente es donde te tienes que poner las pilas and
because-
catch all those red flags.
Yes, because it's also so easy to like just start overlooking little things, or maybe there's some things that you don't really like in a person, but then you just start spending all this time with them, and then you just get in so deep, your emotions get involved, and that's when it's over. It's like
Exact. And I feel like you mentioned something that is super important. You know, I feel like whenever, you know, uno también, when they come from like a broken family, we almost kind of be like, well, my parents were like that. I feel like everyone's relationship should be like that. Y obviamente there's good dates, bad dates, but you'll never know if it's a good date unless you go on them.
Exactly.
You know, hace poco you opened up about, you know, flying out for a date. Flying out, amigas, you went on a winery date and you soon and quickly realized that this was not the date for you. Cuéntanos de eso. ¿Cómo conociste a esta persona? ¿Cómo empezaron las ideas de que vente pa' acá? You know, and why did you feel like this was not the date for you? Cuéntanos.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to tell you the story. So I met this guy. At the time, I was on a dating app.
Okay.
I had met this guy. So when we went on our trip, it was this summer. But we had met on this dating app like over a year ago. So we had like followed each other on Instagram. We had been talking here and there. He had like invited me out to dates and stuff, but he actually didn't live over here. He lives, I don't want to say too much. I'm a little scared of him now, but
He lives far.
he lives a little far, right? And so, yeah, we followed each other on Instagram. Eventually one day, he's like, hey, like, I want to take you to Napa Valley. And I'm like, oh, like, that sounds nice. Like, that sounds fun. I've always wanted to go. I've always seen like really pretty pictures and stuff, and I've wanted to go to a winery. I had never been at that time. I was like, ooh, like, should I do it? Should I not? So I talked to like a few of my friends. One of them was like, girl, just do it. Like, just do it for the plot. Like, it's fine.
Like
you
hyping you
should.
up. Yeah.
And then the other
pierdes.
one was like, girl, like, you don't know him. Like, what if you get kidnapped?
It's
Like,
scary. Yeah.
all of these things could have happened. And so I decided to go. But I did tell him, like, I don't want to seem like somebody I'm not. I was like, hey, like, I just need my own hotel room, right? Like, I need to be separate. I'm not going to be...
Like sleeping in the same room with you? Like, no.
Yeah, and I set that boundary and stuff, and he was fine with it. And then I flew. Well, he paid for my flight and stuff. I flew over there. He was, like, driving distance, like an hour or so. So he drove and picked me up, and... From that first moment, so I had talked to him on FaceTime before. We had FaceTimed, and it was fine. The FaceTime was good. And
You're
everything.
like, okay, he's real.
Literally, yeah. Like, at least I made sure of that. Keep in mind, I'm not saying go and do this. Like, don't do what I did. Honestly, this is good that I'm telling this story so that I could bring awareness to not be stupid like me. But basically, yeah, we go to the first winery. Everything was super beautiful. He was being, a gentleman. He was being nice and everything. We were having good conversation. But I was already like, maybe this wasn't the best idea, because I'm not gonna lie, something about his voice, I realized I didn't really like his voice. And so I was like, oh no, I'm stuck here with him. But whatever, it is what it is. Like, I'm the type of person who I just try to make the best out of any situation that I'm in, right? So I'm like, okay, we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna go to different wineries. And me in my naive little head, I'm like, this is what he wanted to do. Like, you know, he wanted to bring me to these wineries. He maybe just wanted a date for the weekend at these wineries. Like, maybe he was already planning this trip and he wanted to bring a date and just have a good experience, right? The next day comes around, right? He had his room, I had my room. We meet up in the morning. Everything is going good. He's being a gentleman. He's paying for everything. He's taking us to, you know, lunch, dinner, all these things. And then he just slowly started to show his true colors. So he started to make like a lot of sexual jokes. And I was just like, oh, like, this is just awkward. And I just wouldn't laugh at his jokes. Like, I would just be like,
You would make him know that you were uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was just like, I feel like I'm an open book. Yeah. Like, if I'm uncomfortable, it's very noticeable. So he did that. And then, girl, this was like horrible. Basically, after lunch on the second day, I'm walking out of the restaurant. This man goes and he like touches my ass.
Like slaps it or just
he
like
didn't
pokes
slap
it?
He like pinched it kind of. And I was just like, what the fuck?
Y tú ni en cuenta, you were walking in front of him or como?
I was walking in front of him when he did it. And so
I
was like, I confronted him, but I honestly didn't know exactly what to do. I feel like when you're in the situation, you always think you're gonna do something and then you don't do it. That was me. I was like, what are you doing? Like, why did you do that? I told him and he's like, what? Like, I'm like, why would you do that? And then he's like, oh, like you had something on you. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, like I'll believe that. And I was just annoyed. But I was like, fuck. Now looking back, I'm like, damn, I should have just took an Uber to the hotel and just left at that point. Yeah. Because that's so disrespectful. Like, that's not okay. But no, I didn't. Because, you know, it's one of those things where you're just, I feel like I'm not accustomed to, I guess, making a big deal out of things in a way. But I really wish I would have. And I know I genuinely am like, that was a learning experience for me. But we ended up going to this one final like winery party after that. And he just started, this is why don't ever go on a trip or do anything, like go anywhere with someone that you haven't actually got to know. Because he just started showing his true colors. And then he was like saying like racist remarks. So we were at this winery. And keep in mind, this is like all white people. It's all like, and I even felt out of place too, except there was actually 2 black people there. And he literally goes out of his way and he makes a remark and he's like, oh, all black people look the same. And I was like...
And you're all gagged. You're like...
I was literally gagged. And I was like, no, they don't. And he was like, they do to me. And then I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what did I get myself into? I just saw all his true colors came out and I was like, who am I even out with right now? Like, this is crazy. So we were like drinking wine and stuff. And then he's like, oh, like after this, we should take a nap. And I was like, oh, like, yeah, like you could take a nap in your room and I'll take a nap in my room because I'm very much like, I don't play about that.
Yeah. And like you're being straight up para que no se pensara otra cosa.
Yeah, I don't want him to get the wrong idea. I tell him that and he gets kind of upset. And then once we get to the hotel, he mentions it again. He's like, so like, we're really not going to take a nap together? And I was like, no, like you could sleep in your room and I'll sleep in mine. Yeah.
And then he sleep anyway.
Literally, and I kid you not, this man turns into a toddler. He like goes like he walks away like.
Y'all mad that my plans didn't go as planned?
Literally, I was like, what? And okay, now looking back, I'm like, all right, I shouldn't have accepted to go on this trip with him. Because now thinking about it, I was naive to think that he wasn't going to want something else out of me. Yeah. But I guess in my head, I just didn't think of it that way. I thought of it because I don't see, I don't see things in that way. Yeah. But I now realize I can't be naive.
Like you're over here going on a date because you genuinely want to meet someone, not going on a date to like have sex or any of that sort.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking like he genuinely wants to get to know me too. Yeah. And he wants to, take me on this cool winery trip and just have a good time together there and not in like any sexual type of way, right? That's what was going through my head. But clearly not. And I have learned my lesson from that. But he gets so upset. And then we go into the elevator. Thank God there was people in the elevator too. Because honestly, I was a little bit scared at that point.
Like, oh my God.
Like, and so we were on different floors too, thank God. So I go to my floor. He goes to his. And I texted him. I honestly don't know. I even texted him. But I was like, what's wrong? And then he was like, dinner is off. And I was like.
He's like, you're not eating tonight. Oh my God. He's like, I'm punishing you.
You're not eating tonight. Literally.
You're like starved. Literally. Dude. What the hell?
And I was just like, what? Like, why? Like, I should be the one that's saying dinner is off. After everything you've done, I should have said dinner is off. Yeah. Not you. Which I should have. Whatever.
But he beat you to it.
He beat me to it. And I'm like, what? Like, what happened? Why are you mad? No, I didn't say why are you mad. I'm like, why? And then he's like, I've had enough of your abuse. I was like, what? He's like, I've had enough of your abuse and being taken advantage of. And this is very one-sided towards me and not fair at all. And I was like, okay. When I read that message, instantly I packed all my stuff up and I booked the first flight home. I was packing my stuff kind of like very frantically because I was scared. Keep in mind, he booked this hotel room. So he has access to be able to come in whenever he wants. So I was very scared about that. I start panicking, frantically packing my stuff. I had called my Uber before I even packed my stuff. So I was waiting on my Uber while I was like putting all my stuff away. And yeah, so I had bought the first flight. And this is another lesson. Never like go out without having your own means. Yeah. Thank God. Like I have my own money. And that's why I was like, what do you mean I'm using you here? Like, what are you talking about? Because I can provide this for myself as well. Like, you're not doing anything new for me here. This is crazy for you to
I could have taken this trip with my girls. Yeah.
Literally. And like you follow me too. You've seen like, I like to travel. I post about it. You've seen that. So what do you mean I'm using you? For me, it's like I never saw it as like, oh, I'm using him. Like, for me, it's like I thought that he also could acknowledge that like my time is valuable just like anybody else's time. And I'm here spending my time with you. Like I could be doing whatever else and I'm here with you. But yeah, I was just like very shocked that he saw things in that way. And I was scared. So girl, I packed all my stuff and I'm like, I'm out the door. And that's why it's important. Always have your own means. Like, don't go out with a man and not be able to make your way home on your own. Yeah. Like, imagine if I would have not like had the money to book my own flight.
Ahí te hubieras quedado. Or even another room, ahí te hubieras quedado.
Exactly. That would have been and you never know how that's gonna end up. So,
did you text him like, hey, I'm leaving, or what was that?
I was scared. Like genuinely, I was scared. I was freaking out. So I didn't text him until I was actually already on my flight. I was like, I'm not even gonna wait until I get to the airport. I'm waiting until I'm already on the flight because I don't wanna.
Like, I ain't giving you a chance, boy. Yeah.
Literally.
Then he would have pulled up to the airport.
Imagine, like you never know. So I texted him once I'm on the flight. I'm like. Oh, because he had also told me, he had said, like, I'm done being taken advantage of, blah, blah, blah. Dinner is off, but I did say that I was taking you to the airport tomorrow, so I'll take you still. Because he's like, oh, I'm a man of my word or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, actually, I already made my way, so it's fine. That's what I told him. And I didn't want, like, if I can avoid a confrontation, I will. So after that, I told him that. I blocked him on everything, and that was that. I didn't have the time of day to like confront him and be like, "Why would you?"
Like, we're not gonna fight about the situation. What's done is done.
Yeah, like you see things in that way. Clearly, I'm not here to change your mind. So it is what it is. Like, bye. And that was the worst dating experience that I've had. It was just like scary, and I know that I know that. I shouldn't have put myself in that situation.
But I think that's what comes with dating. Sometimes there'll be good dates, sometimes there'll be bad dates. You'll never know until you actually have them. Y obviamente ya, lo bueno que nada te pasó y tienes esa experiencia para que aunque sea alguien que nos esté mirando hoy, pueda saber que pueden pasar cosas así and knowing how to react. Hablamos un poquito me estabas platicando un poquito de que he follows you on Instagram y obviamente sabe que, you do social media. Does being such a public figure, like, make it hard for you to date? Do you straight up tell the guys, like, hey, I do YouTube, I do social media, es lo que hago? O ¿cómo es eso para ti when it comes to dating?
Honestly, it's a little bit of a weird thing. It's like, it's very situational. For example, I'll try my best not to share that. Like when I was actually on a dating app, I was trying my best not to talk about what I did, because then I feel like you just feel so vulnerable.
Yeah.
I feel so vulnerable. Like now you're going to watch my videos, you're going to form an opinion, and without even actually getting to know me, like person to person. So I would try to avoid sharing it, but then there's like been people that I've met through like, let's say like mutual friends and stuff, and like obviously they know and they figure it out right away. And it's just it's an interesting thing. I think that is one of the weirdest things about doing social media now that I'm single, is it's kind of, it's like up in the air. I'm like, I feel weird about telling people sometimes, but then
you eventually have to.
I have to, and it's a whole, it's tough.
Nos cuentas un poquito también about not ignoring the red flags. Obviamente suele pasar mucho. A lot of people, like you said, will be like, oh, I don't like this, but fuck it, I'll give them another try. What are red flags that now that you're dating, you're like, you know what? Not just me, but you girlies at home should not ignore. And as soon as you see that red flag, you're like, I'm done.
Okay, there's a lot of little ones, but I'll say like one of the ones that I first see when I'm seeing if I should even get to know somebody, their Instagram following. It says a lot about them.
Yeah.
It does. If you follow nothing but women, or you follow like OnlyFans models, you follow like naked women, I want nothing to do with you. Because in my eyes, you don't have sexual discipline, and I don't want to be around that. Like, that's a man that's never going to give me the life that I want. Like, they're never going to respect me. They're always going to be looking for something else. And I think that in general, like just porn and all of that in general is very, very detrimental to people's brains and everything. So that's a huge thing for me that I look out for as like one of the first little red flags, or big red flags, I guess. Another thing is a wandering eye. Like if we're in the barely beginning and I already catch you like
looking at someone else while you're like with me.
And it's not like I'm like actively like, oh, is he looking at this girl? But you'd be surprised how some guys are. Like, you really would be surprised how disrespectful they can be. Yeah. They'll literally be like, yeah, that's a huge one. Another red flag. I think another one is when the guy thinks he's the prize. Like, he genuinely sees himself as the prize, or he just makes little remarks about like, oh, like, just, you know, the little remarks that guys can make, like, oh, you should be like glad to be out with me type stuff. Like, nobody has told me that. Nobody has told me that, but like,
what would you do if they tell you that?
My jaw would drop. I would be shocked.
Like, I wouldn't even go out with him. Some men feel like they're like a whole ass trophy, but I'm like, babe, you're a participation medal. Literally. Hablamos un poco de your healing journey and, you know, your dating experiences, pero yo quiero platicar about the big elephant in the room. Hace poco posteaste a video with a guy and you blurred out his face and everyone went crazy. People were like, Pau, is this your new man? ¿Quién es este muchacho? Cuéntanos. Y pues aquí que te tengo, amiga, cuéntanos. ¿Quién es ese muchacho? Why did you blur out his face? Cuéntanos todo ese chisme.
Oh my gosh. Well, honestly, I feel like I can't say too much about this, but I will say, I realized that day that people are really chismosos.
I'm like, me as fuck. Me all asking it. I'm like,
including
yes.
You, Alan.
Everybody, though, was going crazy. I saw, like, so many, like, TikTok pages reposting about it.
Yeah, and they quickly, like, found him, and it was this whole thing. But you know what? I don't want to talk about it too much. I did blur out his face, though, because I knew that was going to happen, but I feel like I made it worse by blurring out his face.
Because then people were like, I'm a detective, bitch. I'll find the guy.
Exactly.
Did they find him?
Yeah, kind of.
Pinche gente chismosa. I genuinely, though, like, I'm a chismoso, right? But, like, I wait for the chisme to find me. Like, when I see things, because I did see, but that chisme never found me. I never saw people, like, exposing him.
It didn't find you? That's good, then.
It'll probably find me after today.
Oh,
I'm like, I'll literally go home. Because do you ever notice that on TikTok?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I feel like they hear our conversations. Like, I feel like I'm going to go home and I'm going to get all that chisme today. I'm like,
you
no me lo tiene que contar ella. I'm like, yo voy a verlo por mis propios ojos.
Oh, my God.
That's crazy. Is it someone, like, you're getting to know? Or, like, what? Because
it's kind of a little bit along those lines, I would say.
Was it, like, hard for you, or was it scary? You know, obviamente you saw the people's reaction. Was it something that you're like, oh, I don't know if I should post it. Chingue su madre, lo postó. Or what was that like in the moment of posting
I honestly didn't really think it through. Maybe I should have thought about it a little bit more. But yeah, because for me, like, I am at a point where I do want like more personal things to be a little bit more private.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't seem like it though, obviously, by like what I've been doing. But I do kind of, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have posted that. But it's not a big deal. Like, it's not, you know, it was just the trend. It's just the trend.
Hablando de eso, obviamente nos cuentas about your healing process, nos cuentas about you dating now. What piece of advice can you give to anyone watching today that are probably going through a very crazy breakup y que se sienten como que there's no light at the end of the tunnel?
I would say just know that no matter what you're going through, I genuinely think no matter what you're going through in life, whether it's with a breakup or any other hardship that you're going through, you can get through it. You can and you will get through it. And these moments build you into a different person.
Yeah.
They literally create you. Like, the pain that you go through creates you. So instead of seeing it as a burden, see it as something good, as something that's going to build you up to another version of yourself, a better version of yourself. And yeah, take things as they are, you know, do what you need to do, get your healing in however you can, and try to really see things positively rather than negatively. And I'm telling you, as someone who has been through a lot of just like random hard events in their life, you will always get through it. You will always get through it. Like, that's literally the only option there is.
And I think it's very important, yo para terminar ese tema, amigas, like if you were to ask me for advice, I think it's very important to, like you said, allow yourself to feel what you gotta feel. Obviamente, you know, it's almost like mourning. When you go through a breakup, especially of so many years, it's almost like you're mourning it. So it's very important, you know, estamos platicando de que tienes que heal the right way. I do believe, you know, you gotta give yourself that time and the grace to feel what you gotta feel. Obviamente, si quieres llorar, llora. Si te sientes triste, siéntelo. Pero no nomás te quedes ahí, you know what I mean? Like, don't just be like, well, I'm sad forever. No. Estás triste por este tiempo, pero te me levantas y te pones las pilas y le sigues adelante porque esa situación o esa persona no es todo lo que you have going on in your life. There's
Life
so many
is so long.
and it's so beautiful.
And
I
it's
feel
beautiful,
like we sometimes get blinded by whatever situation we have going on. Yo también, even if it's not relationship stuff, I'm always like, oh my God, my life is horrible because of whatever situation I'm going through. And then I'm like, wait, pero en verdad si empiezas a ver tu vida as a whole, your life isn't that bad. And I feel like that happens a lot, amigas, but you know, like me and Pau have been saying, you're gonna get the fuck through it. Ya para terminar esta entrevista, quiero platicar del último tema. Nos estabas diciendo at the beginning que tienes tu podcast, you know, My Best Self, which I love. Cuéntanos de eso. How did you come up with the name and what inspired you to create this project?
I did mention earlier how I really wanted to have a platform and I wanted to be able to, you know, share my thoughts with people. And it's funny because, so I've been on social media for a long time already. Yeah. It's been like, maybe like 8 years. And I had recently, like, I would say like a year ago, I got to a point where I didn't feel fully fulfilled anymore. I felt like I was going through these motions and I was getting all these really cool opportunities. I was doing all these cool things. I was going to events, going to movie premieres, doing all this stuff, but I still felt like there was something missing.
Like you had a purpose, a bigger purpose?
A bigger purpose. And that's when I started to, well, actually, it's crazy because it came to me kind of in a dream. When I woke up one night from a dream that I had, the first thoughts that popped in my head, I don't remember exactly word for word, but it was along the lines of, you are not doing what you were meant to do with your platform. And it was that. And I was like, oh, wow.
Oh, that's hard to wake up to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
like,
was like, oh, shoot. Yeah. Like, this is... And it made perfect sense because I didn't feel like I was. Yeah. I felt like, you know, although I was trying to, you know, sprinkle in a little bit of positivity into my content and I was talking about self-love and stuff like that, I still felt like I needed to take it up a notch and felt like it was really important for me to do and really important for me to share what I've learned in my own journey, healing through different traumas. And that's when I was like, all right, I need to actually do something bigger. And so for a long time, for over 6 months, I contemplated my podcast. It took so long for me to actually start it, so long. And I finally did it. And I really, truly wanted it to be because I've suffered a lot from, things like depression and other mental health illnesses. And so to be able to go through that and to get out of it, it took a lot from me. But I wanted to be able to share my journey and share, just to be able to inspire people. Like, that was my biggest thing. I want to inspire people. I want to do as much as I can. I want to plant that seed inside of people because I understand what it feels like. I know what it feels like. Trust me, to know that your world is crumbling down, to genuinely feel like you don't really want to be here. Yeah. I know that feeling way too well. And so I wanted to bring that light and that hope as much as I could. And I knew that people already really enjoy my content. They enjoy me as a person. So to hear this message from me, I was like, okay, I think that the people that really enjoy my videos, hearing this from me is going to be meaningful for them.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest thing. And I just really do want to help people become the best version of themselves in every single way. And that makes me feel amazing. It gives me purpose. And yeah, that was that with my podcast.
How did you come up with the name? Was that like a no-brainer? Did you sit on it and be like, is this the right name? Or like instantly as you came up with it, you're like, no, this is the one. ¿Cómo pasó eso?
Honestly, I thought about it for a while. There was like a few different variations of things that I wanted to like create. Like, for example, one of them was like Improve Me Podcast. But then I was like, that's good, but it doesn't have like what I really want.
Like, it doesn't resonate with what the purpose you're trying to...
The full purpose, right? And then I guess I got to the point where I was like, just seeing life as in like, how would my best self react to things? How would my highest self react to things? So I thought maybe my highest self could be good. But then I was like, I'm not sure. Or maybe that one was taken or something. I don't remember, honestly. But my best self, it ended up being perfect because I was like, okay, this is everything that I want to share encapsulated into 3 simple words, and it's perfect.
I love the name because I feel like, as a viewer, you can be like, oh, she's sharing her best self, but it also, as a viewer, you're like, you know what? I want to be my best self.
Yeah.
And I feel like you talk about so many topics. Obviamente, we've talked about healing here today. We've talked about breakups y todo eso, but that's not just all you talk about. I feel like your podcast has a little bit of everything and a little bit for everyone. Is there things that are off limits for your podcast, or are you like more of an open book and you're like, you know what, if this is important to me, I'm going to talk about it because it can be important to someone watching?
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily anything that I'm like, oh, this is off limits. For me, it's whatever topic that can correlate to being your best self in any way, whether that's spiritually, whether that's mentally, physically, financially, even anything that correlates to being a better you and a better version of yourself. That is really what I wanted to be about. So I feel like I don't talk about maybe just random topics that don't correlate to that, but I do try to stay within the means of self-improvement and bettering yourself in any type of way.
And I feel like I've mentioned earlier, I feel like anyone can consume that podcast. Why? Because mírame a mí, amigas. Obviamente, I brought up the whole topic about, how women have more power than they think. Obviamente, that does not apply to me because I'm not a woman. But me as a viewer, I'm like, wow, I didn't see that perspective. And I know if that was a very mind-opening or eye-opening, video, I know that for women that do feel like they can relate, that is literally mind-blowing to understand and really grasp. Yeah. So I'm really happy that you're doing the damn thing and really putting on your girlies and just your viewers. Ustedes si quieren ir a escuchar, amigas, ahí les voy a dejar todas las links down below. Pero ya para terminar, yo quiero saber en dónde se mira Pau en los próximos 5 años, whether that's professionally, emotionally, and personally. What are your goals for the next 5 years?
My goals for the next 5 years, I definitely want to create something from my platform, something more than what I have now.
Yeah.
I want to build a business. I've always wanted to. I just don't know exactly what I want to do. That's where my issue is. But I think by the next 5 years, I know I definitely will already be doing it. And hopefully it will already be very successful. That's something I really want to focus on. As well as in 5 years, maybe I see myself in a serious relationship at that time. I don't know. I can't time relationship-wise, right? But definitely that. Definitely, investing in more properties. and just continuing to grow. That's my biggest thing. I think I want to continue to learn new things every single day. Yeah, those are my goals for now.
If you continue doing what you're doing now, I know you're gonna accomplish all those goals and more. And I'm so excited to stick around to see you accomplishing them. Ya para terminar la entrevista del día de hoy, amigas, I wanna say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to sit down here with us y platicar para poder conocerte un poquito más and just know a little bit more about your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alan, for having me. It's a pleasure always. I'm like, please invite me back again.
Anda, que en unos 2 años, amigas, la vamos a volver, o a lo mejor, you never know, a lo mejor en 2 años todas las metas que te tienes ahorita ya las hagas hecho, y esperemos que sí, amigas. We're gonna manifest that for her. Y pues sí, amigas, esto es todo lo que les tenemos aquí el día de hoy. If you guys want to go ahead, not if you guys want to, go ahead and follow Pau on our social medias, which I'll leave down below as well as on the screen. Y también no se les olvide to follow me on all of my social medias so you guys won't miss any future episodes. And with that being said, thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
And thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye.
Bye, guys.